the tracks that you wrote in wanting to hear again. We had some fun sifting through your letters, some surprises in store, and during the course of the programme we'll be reading out some of your comments.
And we begin the show with a track by the Canadian singer and performance artist Jane Sibery. We received various letters requesting this, and my favourite came from a person who described himself as Ian in Otley. He said he was very glad we played Angels Stepped Down because he wasn't aware of her before, and then he stuck a little sticker saying "Gosh" on his card. I particularly liked the way he signed off as well. Ian in Otley, and he left us his postcode.
Come on, baby, come on, give me. 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 Come on, give me. Come give your love to me.
Your most requested track, that was An Angel Stepped Down by Jane Sibery from her very excellent album When I Was a Boy, which is on the Reprise label.
And we're going to be hearing more from Jane Sibery in the new year, because when she was over here recently doing a very short British tour, we interviewed her for this programme, and a very interesting interview it was too.
Now, here's an example of the sort of letter we've had to contend with. This says, the piece of music which is my favourite was on a few months back. I can't remember the title or composer, but it's written for a film. It sounded like an ice cream van from hell. Very eerie feel to it. Good luck if you can find out which one I mean. That was from C.A. Roberts in Manchester. Well, Paul Lambert of Torquay wrote rather more succinctly, Hello, Harry Partch, the letter.
The letter. Cincinnati, Ohio, October 2nd, 1935. Hello, pals. Gee, I was glad to hear from you. Believe it or not, pal, I just received your letter today. It must have followed me all over the world, but it got to my wife, and she broke it open and read it and sent it to me this morning. Well, I came back east and run into a shotgun wedding, and I was the goat. So back on the bum again. Well, pal, I had a swell time, and since he told my wife's father found out I was back, and then the little lamb was led up to the altar. So now I'm just out of jail and feeling fine, and I think I have a job starting the 12th of October, and I truly hope my dear little wife is dead by then. Give Kentucky my best regards and tell him I'm not doing so well, but looking to score before long. In fact, I've got to or get in jail again. It's cold out here, and I'm not good looking enough to get by that way. Do you get the drift? So I'll say good night and good luck, hoping to hear from you at once and tell me all the news. Your pal, Pablo.
Instrument builder extraordinaire Harry Partch there, with a track called The Letter from an album called The Music of Harry Partch, and that's available on the CRI label, and he was certainly one of the discoveries for me this year, Mark.
Yeah, that track was certainly one of the oldest we've played, I think, recorded in 1950 with Harry Partch doing the intoning voice, actually reciting a letter that was sent to him from a tramp friend, and the ensemble was a typical one for him, his own instrument called a Kithara 1, a 72-stringed instrument, an adapted guitar and a couple of marimbas.
Right, now fast forwarding into the future, here's a track from an album by Amorphous Androgynous called Liquid Insects, which was requested by an anonymous person from Sheffield who wrote it on the back of an envelope. Rather appropriate, actually, since Amorphous Androgynous themselves were extremely cagey about giving away any personal details. This track's called Liquid Insects.
The opening section of Liquid Insects by Amorphous Androgynous, and that's from their album Tales of Ephedrina on Quigley Records, distributed by Virgin.
And that was definitely one of the house albums of the year, I think, and all you listeners of exquisite modern taste will be interested to know that Amorphous Androgynous will actually be appearing under another of their aliases on Mixing It in the new year, because they also record as the Future Sound of London, who've got a new album out in the spring, and they're going to be doing a special session for us in February.
Now, one of the things about presenting a programme like Mixing It is that you don't really have an accurate picture of who your audience is. And so it seems, nor do you of us. Andrew Chester of London NW2 very kindly sent us a Christmas card which had a picture of a couple of badgers on the front. Any resemblance may or may not be accurate, he said. Keep up the good work, even if sometimes I hate what you play. It's always worth listening to what my wife calls the smashy and nicey of the avant-garde. I don't know what you mean. Paul Westerman of Eastbourne wrote, surely the high point of Mixing It year was I'm so happy when you're near by the Shaggs. More please. So here are the poptastic Shaggs.
I'm so happy when you're near, I'm so sad when you're away. I've been happy almost every day now that you're here to stay. But when you have to leave, then I'll start to grieve. Every week you have to go, every time it's a different road. I never know what to do, I'm so lonesome without you. When you're far away, you are always in my dreams. And when you're home to stay, we make a perfect team. It's so hard to have to wait for you to try to use the gate. But when you get there, we have many
Oh yes, that was the Shaggs, Dorothy, Betty and Helen Wiggin, teenagers in the late 1960s, taken into a recording studio by their father to record a quite extraordinary album which I'm delighted to see you've picked up on. The album is called simply The Shaggs. That track was I'm So Happy, and it's available on the Rounder label. It was good to see that some of you remembered a track we played by Cooder back in September. Cooder actually put out 2 albums this year after his rather disappointing excursion last year with Little Village. One album was the soundtrack to the film Trespass, and the other was an album which he made with a sitarist called V.M. Bart, and this was really an extraordinary piece of work. The track we've chosen was Ganges Delta Blues. The album's called A Meeting at the River.
Cooder on bottleneck guitar, and V.M. Bart on Mohan Veena, an instrument of his own invention which is a cross between a sitar and a slide guitar. That track was Ganges Delta Blues, and the album was A Meeting at the River, which is on the Water Lily Acoustics label. If you have problems getting that, it's distributed by Stearns in London.
And those of you who like your music live will be interested to know that the whole of that album was done absolutely live and more or less improvised.
Now, this year we've come across some really good electroacoustic music, and I'm glad to see that John Donaldson of Cambridge has picked up on one of the most intriguing examples. He says, I nominate the piece you played by Paul Lansky from his elusive long player, Home Brew. Rather cryptically, he's written at the bottom, I remember blunt instrument, sorry Robert. Some dodgy band Robert used to play, and we'll try and unearth some blunt instrument in the new year.
No comment.
Steve Cox of Peterborough said, about 4 or 5 weeks ago you played as part of a group of 3 pieces, a piece which took the found sounds of traffic on a highway as its basis. I'd particularly like to know what this is. Well, to put you out of your misery, here it is, Night Traffic by Paul Lansky.
Well, if only travelling down motorways always sounded like that. That was an excerpt from a longer track called Night Traffic by Paul Lansky. The album is called Homebrew, and it's available on the Bridge label. Now, next up by popular demand is a musician we've featured in a session on Mixing It before. He's the Kenyan Neatiti player Ayub Ogada. This year, some of you may have seen him touring the country with Peter Gabriel, and he also released an album on Gabriel's Real World label, Enmana Kuoyo, from which we take this track, Dala.
Koro ero chuma na kende Areyo to ero ki chaku no mia Adek to ero ki yao no do ot papai Angwene ro koro ki cho the wood Ki mako yo Angwene ro koro ki cho the wood Ki mako yo Achio to koro ero chuma na kende Areyo to ero ki chaku no mana mia Adek to koro ki yao no do ot papai Angwene ro koro ki cho the wood Ki mako yo Angwene ro koro ki cho the wood Ki mako no yo Achil to koro ero chuma na kende Ario to ero ki chako no mana mea Adek to ero ki yao no do ot papai Angwene ro koro ki cho the wood Ki mako yo Angwene ro koro ki cho the wood Ki mako no yo Achil to koro ero chuma na kende Ario to ero ki chako no mea Angwene ro koro ki chao no dot Angwene ro koro ki yao dot Cho the wood Angwene ro koro ki cho the wood Ki mako yo Angwene ro koro ki cho the wood Ki mako yo Angwene ro koro ki cho the wood Ki mako yo
Dala by Ayub Ogada from his album Enmana Kuoyo on the Real World label, as requested by Morag Crawford of St Andrews in Fife. Now, we've played a lot of Frank Zappa recently, and it's no surprise that he's appeared in your pick of the year. Ian Stonehouse of Wolverhampton wanted to hear anything by him, and regular correspondent Dave Taylor of Purbrook in Hampshire sums it all up. He said, my choice of the year would be the track you played from The Yellow Shark by the late, great Frank Zappa. He was an incredible, fascinating musician, and the title of your programme sums up what he was all about. So, here it is, Uncle Meat from Yellow Shark. Uncle Meat by Frank Zappa from the album The Yellow Shark, and that's on Zappa Records. That was played by the German group The Ensemble Moderne. And as ever, this week we're offering our playlist. Just send a stamped addressed envelope to Mixing It, 16 Langham Street, London W1 1AA, and you will get all the details for all the tracks we've played tonight.
Next week, in the first programme of the new year, we'll be playing tracks from albums which we particularly liked, tracks which we didn't actually play first time around. And we leave you this year with a piece by Ayub Ogada, which was requested by Marjorie Anderson of Whitby in Yorkshire. It's called Sanctus, and it's from his album Te Deum. Good night.
Good night.
The Sanctus from Ayub Ogada's Berliner Mass. The Estonian Philharmonic Chamber Choir and Tallinnan Chamber Orchestra were conducted by Tonu Kaljuste. Mixing It was presented by Robert Sandall and Mark Russell, and the producer was Philip Tagney.